With 2026, Riot has rolled out a huge wave of new settings and hotkeys. From the ability to move with WASD, which when set up properly can be a huge advantage, to a brand new camera setting that completely changes the game for so many players, that's really only the start. There are countless settings and hotkeys hidden away that can instantly level up your League gameplay, and we're going to be breaking down everything that matters, making sure that you're running the best possible settings for the new season and beyond. And honestly, there's never been a better time to start your League climb. Whether you're new to League, hard stuck, or just finally want to achieve the rank of your dreams this season, SkillCapped has you covered. From mastering the core fundamentals and must-know Season 16 tech inside our Role Essentials course, to seeing exactly how it all gets applied in our Bronze to Diamond series, where we take hard-stuck players, document their climb step by step, using only our content, breaking down every mistake, every adjustment, and every breakthrough they make so you can see what it truly takes to climb, to Challenger commentaries, where the best players in the world break down their thought process and decision-making in a real games, teaching you how to win on your champion in your elo. And to keep you ahead of the curve, we've even got our brand new meta updates course, covering hidden tech, broken builds, and macro strategies our challenger players are abusing before they go viral. Now, best of all though, if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service, you get every penny back. We're just that confident. So seriously, what's there to lose? Check out SkillCapped today, completely risk-free, using the limited edition discount in the description below. So starting off with the most exciting addition for many players, which is the introduction of WASD movement, which although live for unranked play already, is set to debut in ranked a little later this year. It's intended to attract the newer players, obviously, and make League feel a little bit more accessible for those coming from games where WASD is typically the default. But even for League veterans, it is shaping up to still be a great alternative. Now, the main benefit of playing with WASD is obviously the ability to move more easily while auto-attacking or even using spells. Rather than right-clicking to move and right-clicking back on your target to auto-attack or aim spells, you can simply hold down left-click and just freely move while you automatically attack your target. Now, there's already been a few controls put in place to stop this being completely overtuned, as when selecting WASD, you're going to incur a hidden attack speed reduction, which compared to perfect kiting is definitely going to be noticeable. But even then, for the average player, WASD is going to make spacing, dodging, kiting just overall a lot easier to do. Now, when swapped to, here's how it's going to work. Q gets replaced by right click, W is replaced with left shift, and your first summoner is replaced with Q. Now, this might be okay for newer players, but if you find this hard to adjust to, there is going to be a few different variations that you could try. For players already familiar with the League binds, one suggestion that we have is binding your first ability back to Q, then changing your second ability to either shift or right click, and changing your first summoner to C. But honestly, we've seen all different kinds of variations, like changing your abilities to 1, 2, 3, 4, and rebinding items. You can even swap WASD themselves to different binds if you want to do that. So just kind of experiment with whatever works and feels comfortable for your playstyle. Now, as for other customization, you're able to change the orientation of your W and S keys by clicking this button here. Now, once enabled, it's going to mean on blue side, W will path you toward the enemy nexus and S to your own, and vice versa for red side. That compared to just up and down. There's even an option to swap your auto attack bind right here. By default, this will be left click, but you can swap it back to right again if you wish. Then change how you want your flash to work right here, either from following the location of your cursor or just the way you're currently moving. But since WASD is still in development, there is a lot to look forward to here, such as movement abilities automatically following your direction, and many more quality of life improvements on the way. So definitely give it a try. So moving over to camera control now. WASD also brings with it the introduction of a brand new option, dynamic camera. Now at SkillCapped, we're obviously strong advocates for free camera, as the benefits are absolutely undeniable once you're comfortable with it, but we also know that not everyone is going to be there yet. And for players still using locked camera, or even those experimenting with WASD, dynamic camera introduces a pretty solid middle ground here. Now how this works is by keeping your champion on screen at all times, just like with lock, but the camera follows your mouse cursor instead. It still provides you with some movement and improved field of view. This is also further improved as you unlock another feature, Scout Ahead, enabling you to freely move the camera whenever you want by holding in the middle mouse button. Then, once released, it snaps straight back to your champion, giving you the best of both worlds. Now you can rebind this feature here in under keybinds if you want something other than middle mouse button. Now as for the most optimal camera settings though, like we said, we do highly suggest using free camera. Then enable smooth camera to reduce tearing and adjust the mouse camera speed to something that feels comfortable for you, not too fast, not too slow. Now another great tip here is to enable per side offset. Now when you press spacebar, rather than centering directly on your champion, you're going to have slightly more vision either up or down the map depending on your chosen side. You'll also want to double check you have champion highlight on camera center enabled under interface and notifications. This setting, it's a complete game changer if you ever lose track of your champion during those chaotic team fights. Now when you press or hold space, your camera's going to center as usual, but it'll also add a circle around your champion and an arrow right above them, making it considerably easier to keep track of where you are. And finally, under camera, make sure to disable Move on Revive. If you've ever been dead, lining up your Gangplank, Ezreal, or Jinx ultimate, just counting the seconds until you respawn, well, this is definitely going to put a damper on that, as your camera will immediately center on your champion. Bye-bye. So now, whenever you spawn, you can already be ready for that cross-map ultimate or sick teleport flank. Come on, man. But moving away from WASD now, our next setting is one of the most important in all of League, but it's where a lot of players go wrong without even knowing they're going wrong, and that is Quick Cast. Most players assume that Quick Cast is either on or off, but there are actually 3 different options here. Normal Cast, which when you press your ability brings up an aiming indicator requiring another click to fire the spell. Quick Cast, which just fires the ability immediately when you press the key without any targeting indicator at all, and the now default Quick Cast with indicators. Quick Cast with indicators is sort of the middle ground between the two options. How it works is that while holding in the bind for your ability, you're going to be able to see the indicator. Then when you let go of that bind, the ability will cast. Now, while at first this is going to be great for beginners or anybody learning a new champion, there's a hidden downside to this. Quick Cast with indicators works on key release, meaning even if your tapping an ability as fast as possible, there's always going to be just a little bit of a delay compared to the standard Quick Cast, which instead works literally the moment you press a key. Because of this, what we highly recommend doing is going into Options, Keybinds, and then pressing Quick Cast All up here. From there, scroll down and ensure both these boxes are unticked. Then scroll down just a little bit more and expand the Abilities and Summoner Spells tab and rebind everything under Normal Cast to shift plus the bind you want for the ability depending on your layout. Now why we do this is because now, by default, our abilities will be Quick Cast, but we still have the option to Normal Cast whenever needed by just pressing Shift. As although in the 99% of cases you are just going to want to be defaulting to Quick Cast, there are going to be those situations where you need to see the range of an ability, like landing a max range Lux ultimate for example, or getting the perfect position for a Bard portal through the wall. But while we want to avoid Quick Cast with indicators for abilities, when it comes to items, it's actually great, as this is going to primarily only affect your wards. See, the problem with having wards on Quick Cast is that you miss out on all of the extra information. Let me explain, like how many wards you have placed, the radius of the vision the ward will provide, which, side note, is more important than you think it is. The amount of times that we see players just drop a ward over this wall here, totally unaware that it doesn't even provide vision of the full bush, it's kind of wild. Then you can see if the ward is in or out of a bush, indicated by the reticle changing color. And now most importantly here, where that ward will land if you're trying to ward over terrain indicated by the targeting reticle. For example, if I'm trying to ward from Dragon Pit over to Try using just Quick Cast, well, it's definitely not going to go where you think it will. And if you don't believe me, just ask Skara. But by holding my Trinket Bind in when using Quick Cast with indicators, I can bring up that extra information, wait until the reticle goes into the bush, and land wards like these first time, every time. And all while on top of that, still having the ability to quickly ward bushes in a pinch whenever needed. And to do this, under keybinds, you're just going to want to scroll down, expand items, and then find Quick Cast with indicators, and put whatever your normal item binds and trinket binds are, which for me are 1 through 7, with trinket on 4. Again, you could just opt to have standard Quick Cast on all your items and then the normal cast with a shift modifier just like we did for abilities if you want to do that. Or even just enable quick cast with indicators for just your trinket bind. It's kind of up to you. Support mains, just remember to also repeat this step with your role quest bind, as that's where your pink wards are going to end up going by default now after you finish your quest. Next up is another setting that, when configured correctly, can give you a huge advantage over most players, and that is attack move. This has seen several important changes recently, so even if you think yours is already set up properly, you're still going to want to give this part a watch. When playing point and click, how auto-attacking works, as most of us already know, is by using right-click. This means if I want to attack a player as I kite away from them, I'm going to have to right-click on them, right-click away to the opposite side of my character, click on them again, and continue to repeat that process, which truthfully, to do accurately, especially at high attack speeds, it's kind of a difficult skill to master, as even if you misclick just a little bit, rather than auto-attacking, you're going to issue a movement command back straight into the enemy and possibly end up dying. This is where attack move comes in, as instead of having the problem of having both attack and move on the same mouse button, you can press A and then left click. So to kite, you'll use right click to move, then press A, and then left click to input an attack command. That way, even if you misclick just a little bit, you're still going to attack rather than walking straight into the player. But again, this is where many players go wrong, as this is going to introduce yet another problem. Unless you're directly clicking on that target, attack move will prioritize attacking whatever is closest to your champion. So in that same situation, if you're trying to kite, but there's another player between you and the person you're trying to hit, your attacks will prioritize them. But there's a fix to this. Go into your settings, then game, enable attack move on cursor. Now your attack move commands will prioritize whatever is closest to your cursor rather than to your champion. Then, one way to improve that even further, and a setting every pro uses, is to go into interface and under ability and attack display, enable show attack range. With show attack range enabled, pressing A will display a circle around your champion showing your exact attack range, letting you see precisely how far you can stand while still being able to auto attack. It's great for spacing or even just harassing in lane, as you can constantly play around the edge of your max range. But while attack move set up in this way is an essential tool every player should definitely use, there's a lot of customization that you can make here to make this even smoother. So open up keybinds, scroll to player movement, and look for player attack move click, which, if we bind to A for right now, is going to mean when kiting, rather than using right click then pressing A, then left click and repeating the process, what you can do instead is just right click, hit A, right click, hit A. So essentially we're removing that entire need for the extra left click. But fair warning, this does come at a little bit of a trade-off, as because we're essentially quick casting our auto, you'll lose the ability to see that range indicator in the process. Now, while A is what's used by default, many players end up swapping that to something more comfortable. Popular choices range from mouse button 5, which is the bottom side button on a standard gaming mouse, spacebar, which does sound weird but many players swear by, or even left click, which can be enabled by selecting this small checkbox right at the bottom of keybinds. Now, if I was able to start fresh, this would absolutely be my personal choice, as it just feels super intuitive to just rotate left and right clicks in order to kite, but that's just me. And speaking of clicks here, you ever misclick in an intense fight and just assume that it's got to be you that's the problem? Well, for many of you, you've actually got an excuse here. It turns out there's a hidden setting actively sabotaging your clicks without you even realizing it does. It's all in a Windows setting called Enhanced Pointer Precision, often referred to as mouse acceleration. This setting dynamically adjusts your cursor movement depending on the speed of your mouse movement. And the simplest way of explaining it here is that it essentially adjusts your DPI on the fly. So even if you move your mouse the exact same distance, if you did it slowly, your actual cursor will only travel a short distance. But if you do it quickly, the cursor is going to shoot across the screen. This is something many players just don't even notice until you put it into a real game scenario. So think about during lane, your mouse movements are going to be very small, very controlled, casually just last hitting minions, maybe throwing an auto on your opponent or even clicking side to side. During all that time, your brain is going to learn exactly how far to move your mouse for each of those actions, and you're going to build that muscle memory. But then imagine that the enemy jungler just appears from over the wall and you're trying to rapidly click away, maybe dodge skill shots and attack move all at the same time. Suddenly those precise movements, those clicks, although you're moving your mouse the exact same distance, you're now more urgent and a whole lot quicker. This is where mouse acceleration kicks in, pushing your cursor farther than expected and dramatically increasing the chance of misclicks. That inconsistency is why nearly all pro players and high-level players, not just in League, but across almost every single game, keep mouse acceleration disabled, allowing for reliable muscle memory and far better control over their clicks and movement. So this also ties into one of the easiest but most impactful mechanical upgrades you can make. Most players, when moving, tend to click far away from their champion. Like when you're trying to chase, there's a good chance you're either going to be clicking your opponent or the ground near that opponent. The problem is if your opponent shoots a skill shot, those clicks don't let you change direction fast enough, so you end up moving diagonally. But compare this to somebody keeping their clicks closer to their champion. They can still chase, but also gain instant, sharper changes in direction, making dodging abilities a whole lot more consistent. This is just one of those must-know mechanics that we break down in our Master in Minutes mechanic course over at SkillCapped.com. You can check out the rest and get full access to our exclusive full library of world-class content right now using the special one-time link in the description below. But anyway, to disable the mouse acceleration, you're going to want to type mouse settings into your Windows search bar. Click additional mouse settings, then under the pointer options tab, make sure you have enhanced pointer precision unchecked, then click apply. Now a little bit of a warning here, if you had this on, it's definitely going to take you a little bit to get used to, and you may need to increase your DPI to compensate, but the caveat is you are definitely going to be better for it in the long run. Now, when people talk about performance in League, they usually jump straight to the mechanics, but your settings, they're going to play a much bigger role than most players realize. And one of the biggest is how smoothly your game is actually being displayed. So let's cover some of the must-have video settings that are used by the pros. Now, first of all, turn shadow quality to off. This absolutely tanks your FPS and offers zero competitive benefit. Next, and most importantly, set environment quality to low. There is almost no noticeable visual difference between low and medium, while very low does tend to look noticeably pixelated. Then we're going to want to crank up character quality and effects quality to the highest setting your PC can comfortably handle, ideally aiming for very high for both, but anything above medium is going to be great here too. And now if your PC is on the lower end, you can also opt to hide eye candy to gain a slight FPS boost. This is just going to remove some of those extra ambient details around the map. And while we're here in this section, it's also worth turning off screen shake, as this just removes the annoying effects that don't really serve a purpose, like on Garen or Assault ult. You're also going to want to turn colorblind mode to on. Now this one's a little bit strange, but it's just going to make certain colors and abilities a whole lot more distinguishable, even if you can already see the full spectrum. By adjusting our settings this way, we keep environmental and ground effects minimal while significantly enhancing champion models and ability effects, helping them stand out more clearly against the simpler background, all while improving performance and increasing your overall FPS. And speaking of which, FPS determines how often your screen updates with what's happening currently in the game. The higher your FPS, the more responsive everything is ultimately going to feel. But where many players go wrong here is your FPS alone doesn't necessarily matter. In fact, there's two variables to this: what your computer can handle and what your monitor can display. But before you go any further, right-click your desktop background, click Display Settings, and make sure you have your main monitor selected. Then scroll down and select Advanced Display. Under Display Information, you're going to want to go to Choose a Refresh Rate and select the highest your monitor can display. Older monitors are likely going to cap out at 60 Hz, but if you got something newer, it could either be 120, 144, 240, or even more. Now, if this wasn't at max and it was just set at the default of 60 Hz, even if your game is running at 240 FPS, you would only have been seeing 60 of those 240 frames. And if that was you, be sure to let us know in the comments below. Anyway, once that's done, jump back into League and open your video settings again. Scroll down and disable Wait for Vertical Sync, as this is absolutely notorious for adding input delay, which is the last thing you want in a game like League. With everything else dialed in though, the final goal is to figure out what FPS your system can hold consistently without any spikes or tears. And to do this, start by setting your in-game FPS to uncapped. Then press Ctrl F to display your FPS in the top right corner, and pay attention to it while there's a lot happening on your screen. Then lastly, once you have that value, you're going to want to cap it at whatever is most stable. Sound settings are just as important as video settings. In fact, studies show your brain reacts reacts to audio faster than it does to visuals. And in League, that means you're often going to hear something like a Lux bind before you ever even see it, giving you those crucial extra moments to react. So when it comes to optimizing the sound, we want to focus specifically on the settings that give us an edge. And to do this, we recommend muting music and ambience entirely. Then crank up sound effects. This is going to be where the biggest competitive advantage comes from, as it lets you clearly hear abilities and skill shots. Then set pings and the announcer just a little bit lower than that. These are still important for audio cues for players dying and important pings from your team, assuming they're not just spamming question marks. Then you're going to want to lower notifications and UI sounds. These mainly cover the things like the sound of putting in skill points, the shop, those useless votes to start Baron or Dragon. And then finally, despite what many people are going to say on the internet, it can actually be an advantage to have voice volume decently high as well. And there's a couple reasons for this. Now first, it could actually be beneficial for getting audio cues on when your own auto attacks go off, or even spell combos. And secondly, in some pretty rare cases, it could even help you detect enemy champions, as many of them have unique voice lines that only play the first time you see a specific opponent on your screen.
Are we supposed to be dating or something? We've never even talked.
Either way, that one's going to be totally up to you. So now let's get into some interface and game settings, starting off with the HUD. The default HUD settings have many scaling and visibility issues that can hide important information on your screen and even reduce your awareness. But with just a few little tweaks here, we can drastically improve all this. Now, starting off, the size of the HUD by default is set to 100. And unless you're visually impaired, all this is doing is blocking a huge portion of the bottom of your screen. Now, many pros opt to actually drop this right down to 0, which is definitely optimal. But if you're somebody who still needs to glance at that HUD pretty frequently, we instead suggest opting for something like 25 or 50 or somewhere in between. Then after that, one of the craziest settings Riot has set by default is the size of your mini-map. For whatever unknown reason, this is set to just a measly 33. Let that sink in, man. The most important part of your HUD is the smallest by default. So obviously a complete cheat code here is to just crank that up. Many pro players usually have this scale between the range of 50 or 80, and we suggest you aim for somewhere in that range as well. Now you could go bigger, but remember, bigger is not always better. I'm not just saying that to cope.
Size doesn't mean everything.
But just like with your HUD, you can end up blocking vital parts of your screen and even potentially misclick the map when using abilities, so try not to go higher than 80 here.
He's trying to TP to the fight, and he misclicked on the minimap, and he TP top.
Lastly, it's also worth just lowering the shop size slightly to around 20. That way, if you're ever caught window shopping, you can at least see more of your screen there. Now, for the rest of the must-have settings under interface, you want to double-check you have Show Loss of Control UI enabled, as this is going to show a helpful bar above players wherever they're crowd-controlled, helping you perfectly chain lockdown. It's also worth enabling Champion Name above health bars. With how absolutely wild some of the modern skins have really become, this makes it instantly clear which champion you're facing, rather than just seeing the name of the summoner. You can also enable Streamer Mode, which hides your summoner name from everybody during the game, replacing it instead with your champion. Now, beyond the anonymity here, this actually provides a small competitive advantage this season, though probably not for the reason that you'd expect, as now when you press tab in-game, you can't actually see the secondary rune tree players have, as it's been replaced by the role quest, and as they can't look you up, they can't see what secondary runes you're going to be running, which can be pretty important for stuff like Cosmic Insight and Bone Plating, but for the average player, it's kind of whatever here. So moving on, you're then ideally going to want to disable Screen Flash on loss of control and damage, as this just adds clutter to the sides of your screen, and the same goes for Show Off-Screen Pings. You can hear that ping and see it on the minimap already. The little icons that pop up on this setting, they're honestly more distracting than they are really beneficial to your gameplay. Now, one setting not on by default, which is definitely going to be worthwhile, is to enable Show Spell Cost. This is another setting you always want on, as there is nothing worse than going for an all-in, only to realize you didn't have enough mana for your full combo. It's also a nice quality of life to enable Show All Minimap Timers. With recent jungle updates, this keeps neutral camp timers visible on your minimap at all times, instead of forcing you to constantly press tab to check them. So scrolling down to combat text, most of these should already be enabled by default, with the exception of experience, which you are going to want to turn on. This is going to add a small pop-up whenever you gain XP, while you can cross-reference this with your XP bar down here to accurately calculate exactly how many minions you need for your next level. useful. The more practical use for this one is when you're getting zoned from the wave and can use this as kind of a visual indicator to know when you're still in range for experience. Then another great quality of life feature that not too many people are knowing about right now, and it's found right at the bottom of interface, is display champion sound notification. When enabled, this setting displays clear visual indicators along the side of your screen whenever global ultimates are cast. That's ultimates like Scion, Kled, Briar, and Karthus. Although there are obviously sound cues for all of these, not only can they be easily missed if there's a lot going on, especially mid-teamfight, different skins for these champions can also give different audible cues. Meaning you have to also know what you're listening for. And that's where this setting really does shine, as it provides you a consistent, easy-to-spot visual alert whenever all these ults are cast, ultimately meaning that you'll never miss one again. Then we've got a few chat settings here. Firstly, it's going to be important that you enable timestamps, which again is off by default. This makes it so that anything pinged or typed in chat is going to leave timestamps. This is how the high-ranked players track cooldowns like summoner spells. If the enemy uses a flash, for example, you can ping it by using your left mouse button. Then, depending on how quick you were, you're going to have a somewhat accurate timer for when they have it available again by just adding 5 minutes onto that time. But do bear in mind that that changes slightly if your opponent has Cosmic Insight or Lucidity Boots. We'll put the actual timers on screen for you regardless. Now, as for other chat settings, depending on how thick your skin is here, you have the option to display chat from everybody, chat from just your teammates, or set it to pre-made, which will only show the chat from any players in your party that you're queued with. Enabling any of these settings not only limits what you can see, but in the case of pre-made, it's also going to prevent you typing to your team as well, which, who knows, could be an issue or even a benefit, depending on the type of player that you are. Although, we definitely do suggest hiding all chat, as it really serves no other purpose than to tilt you. And it's good to know, regardless of your chat settings though, your team will still be able to see your pings and you're still going to be able to see theirs. And finally, it's also worth muting enemy emotes, so you don't have to sit there while your opponent spams their mastery for the 80th time in lane, or have to look at a thumbs up when you make a questionable play. We have all been there. So before we jump into hotkeys, last but not least, we do have some crucial settings that we're going to want to enable under game. First, turn off auto attack. With this enabled, if you ever idle or get crowd controlled, you're going to instantly begin auto attacking nearby enemies or minions. Now, while this may not sound like too much of an issue, this can actually end up getting you killed. In fact, there's even this famous clip of professional player Misc getting rooted under turret, and due to having this setting enabled at the time, caused his champion to auto attack, get turret aggro, and die because of it. That said, if you're a jungler and like to idle while watching other lanes, auto attack can be a nice quality of life. Also, super niche, but if you play Zeri, having this setting enabled allows you to pull off a special combo. Next, enable target champions only as a toggle. This works in tandem with the target champions only bind, which is tilde by default. That's the key to the left of the 1 on your keyboard. And when enabled, this is going to make it impossible to click on anything but champions, which is great for turret diving or fighting in large minion waves. Do bear in mind though, this doesn't work with attack move. And finally, the last option to consider here is enabling clamp cast. Abilities in League primarily work in one of two ways. If it's a line missile like Ezreal Q and you have your cursor outside of its max range, it's going to fire in that direction. But compared to something like Annie Ultimate, if you do the same, the game's going to force you to walk forward until you're in range. That's where this setting comes into play. If this is enabled, you're going to automatically cast the ability at max range if your cursor is outside of it. Good for some champions, not so great for others, so experiment with what you prefer. And alright, last but definitely not least, we have some important keybinds that you may want to adjust. The newest one to consider here is your role quest bind, especially for support and top laners with their pink wards and teleport. This, for many players, especially veterans, is going to be a little bit awkward, as many of us are used to using V as our bind for the caution ping. If that's you as well, you can opt to change this at the top right here. If you're looking for suggestions though, things like T, X, C, or even Z will work. Now, one bind that's also worth rethinking here is how you use your trinket. Having it on 4 works, but it often feels awkward in fast situations, especially when you need to drop a ward instantly. A whole lot of players move their trinket to a more accessible key, like T or even a mouse side button. This makes things like quick combat wards or ward jumps a whole lot smoother, and you can do this at the top of items. items. Also, as a bonus here, this cleans up your items so keys 1 through 6 line up more intuitively. So then scroll down to Item Shop. By default, opening the shop is done in a few different ways: clicking your gold, clicking the shopkeeper, or hitting P on your keyboard, which forces you to move a hand off either your mouse or your abilities. Now, hearing that might not sound like a big deal, but it slows down your buys and it increases the chance of getting caught standing still at the worst possible moment. A simple fix here is rebinding the shop to N. This way, when you press B to recall, your shop key is right next to it, making buying faster, smoother, much safer overall. But again, anything more comfortable can work too. Mouse button 4 with a shift modifier, it's a personal favorite of mine. And last but definitely not least, something else that you could consider is binding specific pings, which can be done under communication. G is the only one bound by default now for the standard alert ping, but two of the most important pings in the game are undoubtedly the enemy missing and on my way ping. Binding these to something like Y, Z, X, or even C can help calling MIAs and ganks way smoother. You'll also want to rebind your caution ping to V if that's what you're used to. And as a disclaimer, before we wrap this whole thing up, if you're struggling to find any of these settings that we talked about in this video, please ensure that you're loaded up into a game. For whatever reason, a lot of these settings featured here are just completely missing if you try to do it through the client. Alright, well now you know the most important settings and the hotkeys that you need for League of Legends in 2026. And remember, if you're truly serious about improving at League of Legends, check out the link in the description below to take advantage of our exclusive discount to SkillCapped.com today. If you don't climb at least 5 divisions using our service, you get your money back, no questions asked. So seriously, what's there to lose? If you made it this far through the video, be sure to drop us a comment down below and thumbs up this video. It means a whole lot and we work hard on these. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.